So I live in California in the San Francisco Bay Area, and unfortunately we have earthquakes here, and they can be pretty scary. In fact, I lived through the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake cowering under my desk, and it was frightening stuff. So as much as I'd like to pretend that that's not going to happen again, the likelihood is it will. That's why earthquake insurance here is so expensive, because it's something that might actually happen. My house was built in 1962, but this room I'm sitting in is an addition we put on in 2011. So this room is up to code, but the old part of the house, like 1,120 square feet, is not. And I've always been worried about it because it's only held to the foundation. We're on a hill, and we have one tall cripple wall on the downhill side, and then the rest is mostly just a perimeter foundation with a mud sill. But that tall cripple wall, which is a little over 4 feet, is only held on with these tiny little 3/8-inch bolts at each end of the mud sill, so they're like 20 feet apart. So the thing is completely inadequately on the downhill side attached to the foundation, and that's always worried me. So I got an email from the California Earthquake Authority a month ago, and they told me about this brace and bolt program. And the basic idea is they will give you $3,000 if you retrofit your house, but you have to do it, legally. You have to get a permit and submit plans to the county planning, and then do the work and send them photographs. And of course, that $3,000 is taxed at California rates and federal rates. So at the end of the day, you're going to end up with $2,400 or $2,300. And truth be told, you're not going to get any serious construction done in California for that kind of money. But if you do the work yourself, which is what I'm intending to do, you might be able to bring it in for that number. So that's what I wanted to make a YouTube video about. I've seen others with contractors crawling around under houses and doing stuff, and various people selling services, but I haven't ever seen sort of what you call not an owner builder, but an owner an owner contractor trying to do the work themselves. So I thought I'd make an interesting YouTube video to do over several months here, and I'll take you through the process, and we'll see how it all comes out, and hopefully we'll have some success here. So this is the downhill side of my house, and as you can see, it's pretty tall, but this is the access door into the crawl space, and the finished floor is about here over the vent, and then the bottom of the cripple wall is like here, and this is 4.5 feet. That's important because the first hurdle we run into when we decide to do this work is that you can do an engineered solution, which is custom for your house, which has the advantage of giving just exactly the particular hold downs you need for your configuration. Effectively what they do is take the weight of the house and derate it a little bit, and to get how much pounds of force have to be resisted laterally. So you probably wind up spending less on actual reinforcing materials if you get an engineered plan, but then you have to pay $1,000 for an engineer, and that comes out of your parts budget, so to speak. Or you can use these sort of canned prescriptive plans, and the one we use here is Standard Plan Set A, and they use it in Los Angeles and a lot of other counties too. And that was developed in 2008, and it's just kind of a general set of rule of thumb for most houses with cripple walls under 4 feet high. There's some critiques of Standard Plan Set A online, and there's some case to be made that it's probably overkill, and we also have better fasteners now than we did in 2008 that can resist more lateral force, but that's a whole topic outside of my expertise as a homeowner, and something for another day. But to use one of those standard plans, you have to have cripple walls under 4 feet, and this one is 4 feet 6 inches. So my first concern here is whether I can use a canned plan, or whether I have to do engineering. And if I have to do engineering, do I have to engineer the whole thing or just this wall? So that's kind of the first thing we need to find out. So when we did the remodel, we used an engineer, and I can still get in touch with her, and she's very helpful, and she can use the existing plans and won't charge me a lot of money to do that. But we need to kind of figure out what actually needs to be engineered, if anything needs to be engineered, or if we can use the standard Plan Set A. So we chatted with the engineer yesterday, and she wanted to know exactly how much engineering the state actually required, whether just doing the lower cripple wall that's over 4 feet high would be enough, or if it had to be all around, and that affects the perimeter of the building, and that affects the cost. Actually, reviewing the material in my homeowner packet this morning, I'm realizing that they kind of just want a building permit with certain words on it, and so it becomes a question of interacting with the county and how to get that, and perhaps not the brace and bolt people. But I think it's still worth a call to Sacramento, I guess, and just to check in and make sure we're all on the same page here. So let's give them a call.
Good morning, EBB. Speaking, how may I help you?
Hi, I'm one of your brace and bolt clients, and I wanted to check in with you guys and maybe ask a few questions this morning.
Okay, and how can I help you?
We got the packet last month, and I'm just getting started on this, and we talked with the engineer yesterday. Well, I should say I'm a homeowner. I'm planning on doing the work myself, so it's kind of a question of pulling the permit, and I guess I should describe our situation. Our house is a 1962 house that's built on a low slope, so the downhill wall, unfortunately, is 4.5 feet high, and then there's no real cripple wall on the uphill side at all. It's just kind of resting on the perimeter foundation. The floor joists are there. But I think because that cripple wall is over 4.5 feet high, that puts me into the type 2 category of houses. So I have to engineer this thing. And so we spoke to the engineer yesterday, and she said, well, what do they really want? Can I just, engineer that 4.5 foot wall? But as I'm looking at your documents this morning, it seems all you folks really care about is a building permit with specific language on it. So perhaps my engineering question is more, I should take up with county where I live to make them happy, so they'll issue a permit with that specific compliance language on it. Is this making sense? Am I on the right track here?
You're absolutely right. Actually, the city is the one that holds the golden key. So pretty much whatever they say, well, it's called a Plan Set A. And actually, you will see that in your packet, as well as if you go onto the website, on the CEA Brace Bolt website, and if you go to where it says About and it says the Retrofit, it gives you the whole plan of what you need to do.
Okay. I know. So I know there are these prescriptive kind of canned plans I can use, but as I say, I'm on the slope. I've got one wall that's too tall, so I have to engineer at least that part of it, I assume. And can I, follow the the boilerplate remedies for the rest, for the other 3 walls, or actually 2 walls probably in real life?
Actually, we wouldn't be able to give you that information. You would need to get that from the city.
Okay.
Whatever the city says that you have to do, that's the one that you need to go by.
All right, fair enough. That's starting to make a little sense here. Okay, then I will get in contact with our beloved county officials, and I'm sure they've done. In fact, I know they've done some others here in the county. So we'll see what they say with regard to all of this. I think that's all I have for you this morning.
Okay, well, have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you for your help. Bye-bye. Yeah, so there you go. That wasn't too interesting, was it? Oh well. On to the county. Brace and bolt is the topic.
Okay.
Got into that lovely program, and of course they want a permit from you with these magic words on it, that it's in accordance with one of the prescriptive plans, or it's an engineered plan. In an ideal world, I would use the canned Plan A, and life would be great. However, my house is on a 15-degree slope, and the lower cripple wall, which is the only real serious cripple wall, is 4.5 feet tall, not 4 feet tall. Okay. So it seems that I fall into it has to be engineered category. It'd be nice if that weren't true. Anyway, we had a remodel done in 2011. I'm still friends with that contractor. I'm it's like $3,000 after taxes, $24,000. I just retired, so I have time. I'm actually going to do this myself. And I read the stuff on the website. I'm not trying to scam you or anything. I'm actually going to take my 60-year-old body into the house with a martini and a hammer drill and go for it. And so, as I say, we did a major remodel in 2011, added a room, and the contractor from that is a buddy of mine, and he talked to the engineer we had do that project who would do this if it's necessary. And she said, well, what do they need engineered? Because they just have to do the 4.5-foot wall. That they can mark up the old plan, and that's kind of easy. But if we have to do the whole thing, then, if I have to pay her $1,000 and you $600 or whatever you're going to charge, then it starts to not pencil out as much. Right. I mean, I'm on a fixed income. I could find the money.
So, what you'd have to do, you would have to use these two, as part of your submittal.
Okay.
And we need 2 copies, 18 by 24, and that's what these originally are.
Yes.
I'm going to shrink it down.
I can make it big.
Okay, so we need 2 copies of both of these. This all would have to be checked boxed and filled out. You would have to either talk to your contractor, find out if you're light construction or heavy construction, and circle what methodology you're using. So it tells you how many of these you got to put per lineal face of the wall, and there's a kind of a sample here, so it will tell you how many you have to put there. If this is large enough, potentially you could just draw your foundation plan here. Now, if you're going to do the shear panels also on the cripple wall like this, then you have to have elevations of those cripple walls that you're doing as part of your plan too. So you'd have your floor plan, just your foundation plan, stating where you're putting these additional anchors, and then elevation plans of just whatever cripple wall you're doing to show the height of it and that type of thing. And then you would be going by whatever nailing schedule is on this.
Okay.
So we would need 2 copies of everything. You bring them in. We take them in. We're doing it on kind of a really speedy plan check, usually a week. And then they'll say most of the time approved. I've had 2 now that they had to resubmit additional information. But the other 3 that have been in here were just kind of, they looked at it, said okay, and stamped it and went. But it's still like
okay.
So I wouldn't go to the engineering portion because I don't think it's necessary. Whether it's 4 feet or 4 foot 6 inches, I don't think that's that big of a deal.
Well, I don't either, but that's it. That's part of the checklist in here, and so I'm worried that I'm going to get knocked out because
because the thing is, if you say no to any of these, you're kicked out of the system, which is so stupid.
Mumble, maybe I mumble.
Yeah, because I had an elderly couple come in, and because of all the check boxes, I had to check yes for everything. It pushed them into a heavy construction category, and their house is typically it's not heavy construction. It's a single-story house, and the cripple walls were only 2 feet high. And I said, "You're not heavy construction, but if you didn't check yes for everything, you're out of the program."
Okay, fair enough.
So I just said, all right, whatever.
Well, that's kind of what I did to get in the program in the first place.
Exactly. So we're not being super picky about it, but we just do have to have the documentation.
So here's what I finally wound up drawing after a couple of weeks of on and off measuring and goofing around. I'm a Mac guy, so this is done in OmniGraffle, which is not a great program for doing architecture. But I know it. I tried to use QCAD, but it was too weird and was going to take me too long to learn, and I didn't trust it would print out correctly. But this worked out all right. This is a 18 by 24 sheet, or that's what it's going to be. This is the foundation plan of my house. This is the tall wall we were looking at earlier. And this is the new addition section. So I'm just listing that as a big gray area and saying that's up to code, don't worry about it. And then I'm proposing that we are going to put some new plywood shear panels here and here and here, and then various hold down hardware around the edge. So you could draw this floor pan directly onto standard plan set A. There's a box for it, but it's not very big and it'd be a pain to kind of do it by hand. So I chose to make this separate sheet 3. Standard plan set A will be sheet 1 and 2, and then I'll do 3, and then I have to do those elevations the fellow at the planning department talked about, and let's take a look at those. So this is the elevation of the tall wall we were outside looking at earlier as it is now. And it turns out I already have 8 feet of plywood shear wall on this wall from a previous. We moved a window around, and at the time while we had the wall open, we went ahead and put some plywood in. So that actually has these 5/8 inch bolts here, which are good bolts, but the original bolts, there's like one here and there's one here. This is the entrance door I was standing in front of. And then there's one here and one here. So, you know, this is kind of ridiculous. These are the vents. And so this is the big wall we have to reinforce. And then towards the front of the house, this is the ground sloping down. There's this little stepped cripple wall, and we also have to address that. And this is my fireplace chimney. So the first thing that has to be done is you need to add blocking into the places where you're going to add more plywood sheeting because the mud sill is not flush with the studs. So you need a flush surface at the bottom of each of these cavities to be able to nail to. There are other ways to address that, but this is the easiest one. So if I turn that on here, so I need to add studs here, all along the bottom, here and here, and then across here and across here. And then what I'm proposing to do is add these shear wall panels. So prescriptive, the standard plan A says I have to have, I think it's 22 feet, and this is like 23 and change. This is where all my utilities come in, so I don't want to put a shear panel there. They like to have them in the corners. So I'm going to add one here, and I did it here to make this one kind of big unit, and also there's a light switch here that I didn't want to mess with, and my water heater's here, and I don't want to mess with that, so it's easier to do this area here. So there's one oddball size panel, but that gets me onto the 16-inch on center studs, and then I can kind of go 4-4. So that'll be that. And then for this, kind of turn the plywood on its side, because one of the ways these step retaining walls fail, according to the stuff I've read, is that the little one shakes till it fails, and then the big one shakes till it fails. So I want to kind of make it one piece as much as I can so that they work together as a system. We can go ahead and turn on all the call-out noise, and here we go. Boom. And so this is kind of the final plan. I have a little oddball situation here in that my rim joist that's holding up the finished floor is flush with the double top plate on this cripple wall. So usually you use these L-shaped clips to connect this to the top plate, and that won't work in my situation. So I've specified some Simpson tie plates, TP57s, the same number that I'd have to use for floor framing clips, which is 19 supposedly on this wall. They're cheap, so it's nothing to worry about. And we'll see if I can get that by the county. So we're going to put like 19 of those along here to tie this together, in addition to the shear panels, and then we'll also be adding 5/8 inch bolts, all thread with plates, and we'll be doing at least 7 of those to bring that up to what the standard plan A says. And then over here, and actually on the uphill wall where there is no cripple wall, we'll be using regular L-shaped connectors to connect the rim joist to the top plate. And these things are wild, and they'll be fun to watch them get put in. I don't know if it'll be fun to do, but it'll be fun to watch. They're kind of, I want to say U-shape, but it's not really a full U. But anyway, they have, these get bolted to the cement, that's what this is, and then the concrete, and then screwed into the mud sill. So they're a way to hold the mud sill to the concrete when you can't get a hammer drill in to put in bolts. And I can't do bolts here because there's not enough clearance, so that's why I've got 3 of these hold down plates here. But there is enough room here to put bolts in, so I'll put a bolt here and a bolt here, and you can kind of see the grade. So that's the plan. Now I'm going to go down to my little local print shop and get it printed up 18 by 24 like they want at the planning department. But before we do that, here is on the standard plan A, these are the stuff I had to fill out, and these are the check boxes that all have to be yes, the guy at the planning department was talking about, including the one that says all the cripple walls are less than 4 feet in height right there. So hopefully that'll get us through the system. This is the reinforcement schedule. We're 1,500 square feet and we're heavy because the house is stucco on the outside. And this says how many fasteners of different types we have to use to meet the standard plan requirements. And then finally there's this section down here which kind of gives an overview. I guess I could have just said see sheet 4, but I didn't. I just filled this out. And check this out. This came out looking awesome. This is in the back of my car, so it's not great. But here's copies of the regular ones, which didn't print all that great. But look at this. Man, that is big and nice. Like I knew what I was doing. There. I'm very happy with that. So I drove back over to county planning, went upstairs, and lo and behold, it didn't take them a week to approve the plans. They did it right there while I was sitting in the office, and it only took like 20 minutes and a check for $370. And then here we are, ta-da! So we're ready to go. And they also put a little binding on my plan drawings here. So now I have an official set of working drawings, like a for real owner builder, and pretty happy about all of this. So nothing to do now but get into the house and go to work. Welcome to the space underneath my house. It's about 5 feet tall here. You can almost stand up. Of course, this is the downhill side. As you go up to the uphill side, it's only about 2 feet. So we'll be crawling around on our bellies when we get around to putting clamps on the mud sill over there. That'll be fun. I'll tell you, it's 10 months later. The permit you just saw me pull is about to expire in 2 months, and that's why I'm getting back on this project. But to be fair, I procrastinated so long because, well, it's 2020 and COVID came along and I, gained 10 pounds in shelter in place. And then we're in an evacuation zone for the California wildfires and we just got back from that. So I've been busy, but now we're going to actually tackle this thing and hopefully finish it up. I guess the first task is to get rid of all these boxes and junk I've piled up here in the corner. So we can get to this corner to put those shear panels in, the 3.5, the 4, and the 4. And this pipe behind me is to a floor drain on the other side of the house, and it also takes the air conditioning water out as well. So I'm going to saw this off of the wall. Up here, I was so proud of myself for putting in lights, a decade ago, or 2 decades ago, I guess now. 3 decades ago? Anyway, so this has to come off the wall, and I actually need to get better light down here for filming, and we'll do that as well. We have this horrible old insulation in the floor, this bad insulation, and it's held up with this crummy net that's been falling down forever, so I'm going to cut that away. And then I notice that this beautiful diagonal piece of 1962 wood from the original build of the house is in the way and is going to have to come off. Of course, it's the only thing that's providing any sort of racking stability right now. And then, of course, the panels go all the way behind my beautifully braced for earthquake water heater, and so all that water heater bracing is going to have to come off the wall, so we can slide behind that as well. So I guess we just pray that no earthquake happens while we're in the middle of this project, not just because of the fact I'm under a very heavy house, but also because we've removed all of the small amount of earthquake support we actually had. Anyway, let me get some lights and stuff and start cleaning up, and we'll get on this thing. Well, that was a couple of hours in real time. I'm not sure why I thought this was a good idea. It's like working in a coal mine in here. There's all this, the dirt in here is this fine dust, and it gets into the air. I should get some masking, but that doesn't sound like much fun either, and it's warm because we're going into a heat wave over the holiday weekend here. So the next project's to get this diagonal board out, I guess, and clean up a little more. I do notice some problems here. Can I flip this while it's running? You see this yellow Romex here goes up through the floor, And then I also have this Carlon low voltage tubing that I'm using into my office that carries Cat 6 and my ham radio antenna and a moisture sensor because this water heater used to leak. So all that's going to have to be temporarily disconnected when the sheeting goes in, but I'm going to leave it for now. So that time lapse was only about an hour, but I'm going to lay off because it's already getting too hot to work under here, even though it's the morning. And even though I used to enjoy this work when I was in my 30s and 40s, now that I'm in my 60s, this old body doesn't take to walking around without fully standing up for hours on end very well. So gotta pace myself. Got most of the Romex loose up there. I noticed that the Romex staples that I put in are really hard to get out, and the ones electricians put in are fairly easy to get out. So that means the electricians were looking ahead, and there's a lesson for you there about not overdoing things. I think that board I took out might be good for building blocking, some of it at the bottom of the stud bays when we get to that. Anyway, on to the water heater. So you may remember when I was showing you the plans, I said that if I put the panels back in this corner, I wouldn't have to deal with the water heater, but it turns out I never came down and measured it, and in fact the panels are going to come all the way to this stud here. So this bracing on the water heater has to come out, which would make me feel bad, except there's really no other place to put panels, so this was going to happen one way or another anyway. So now we've moved to the other side of the entrance door, and this should be an easier task, is to get rid of this pegboard, which I've been looking at for 30 years and have wanted to get rid of all that time because pegboard is stupid generally, and hanging it down here where you can't really hang anything on it is extra dumb. But the good news is this should come out easy, and the fact that it's here means none of these wires have been attached to anything, so it's just a question of removing this. If you look way back here, here's my existing shear panels from when we moved the window upstairs. So let's rip this thing out. So are you tired of Tales from the Vienna Woods yet? Well, sorry, but it's public domain. Behold the Wall of Terror. This is the stepped cripple wall, which we have to work on next. And I'm sitting here staring at this, realizing that this is going to be a several-day project. Because my water comes in here, my electricity comes across the chimney on the right there, and my main sewage line goes out. We're not going to be able to take that out. We'll have to notch around it. Kind of wonder if you need to do anything at all, since, you know, one side's braced by the chimney and the other side's braced by cement, but Standard Plan A says you got to do what you got to do. So the first thing I think I'm going to try to do is reroute this water supply. I have no idea how to do it. It comes in here on this line. That goes out to a hose bib out in the front of the house, and then this is my main line into the rest of the house. It goes up here and then back on this old 1962 galvanized pipe back to the rest of everything. So I'm going to try to figure out a way to jump from here to over there, which is about 12 feet, so I can take all this off the wall, because I just don't see any easy way to do this by trying to move it out a little bit. And then we'll try to get these electrical circuits out. We moved our panel from this wall to this wall years ago, and the splices for all the old circuits are in this box here, but I can probably unscrew that and kick it forward. So looks like it's going to be tedious, dull, and awful, and of course there's even less headroom here as well, just to make it that much more fun. But I'm going to do a little research now, because I don't know anything about galvanized pipe and how to temporarily splice into it. I'm hoping I don't have to do any threading, but let's see what, there's some kind of clamping thing, but let's see what we can do. Well, we have all the tools out today, let me tell you, and we also have this weird Martian sunlight this morning because of all the California wildfires. It's strange days. Anyway, I thought about this a lot yesterday and decided that I actually do want to have the water pipe up against the wall where it is right now, ultimately on top of the new sheeting when it's in. Because if I relocated the pipe to where I'm sitting now, it'd be hanging down, it'd be in the way of the HVAC, and you know, and that's no good. So we really only need a temporary connection between here and 12 feet over. and we also need a connection to the hose bib line, because that runs my engineered septic system. To make a temporary connection, I've decided to use garden hose, which I hope will work. It's probably totally illegal, but you know, country plumbing. And so that leaves the problem that we had yesterday, is what to do about transitioning from this galvanized pipe to something easier to work with. In an ideal world, I would cut this and unscrew this side all the way back to the nearest joint and build out my PVC from there. The problem is that this pipe is like 25, 30 feet long. I've never seen anything like it. And to run PVC from the elbow way down there would be a whole other project in and of itself, because it's hard to get to. There's stuff attached to this pipe. It's just crazy. So it's much easier to work with here. So one way or another, I am going to cut it, and I've already turned off the water and opened the cold water spigots upstairs, and then drained it at the lowest point. So we're ready to go. And my wife is out of town for the next 5 hours or so. So hopefully I can finish this before she gets back. And I know I talked about not wanting to do threading in the last section, but I started to realize I've never threaded steel pipe before, and it might be kind of interesting to do. So I went up and watched a YouTube video, and it turns out that they'll rent one of these bad boys to any clown with 15 bucks for a day. So that's what I did. This is a ratcheting pipe die. Hopefully it's not beat up too much from all the people who've rented it. And so I thought I'd cut this and try to put a thread on this if I can, and that'll either work or twist this totally off the wall. It seems pretty firm right now, but it's connected on both sides. If I can get a thread on this, that's great, because then this will be a permanent legal connection. In case it all goes horribly wrong, however, and I mess it up completely, I also got one of these compression fittings, which is probably much less legal, but will also allow me to bring the water up, hopefully in short order, if I don't like break something way back there and flood down here and have to call a plumber. So should be a fun adventure. In the meantime, I got the Sawzall and a metal blade, and we're going to cut it. I have tacked up a piece of manila folder up here, which is either, because I don't want to get the blade caught in this screen, which is either a clever idea or a stupid idea. We'll see. And I have some blue tape here to kind of give me a straight 90-degree line to try to cut on here. So, you know, let's have at it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. Well, that was easier than I thought it was going to be. And it's fairly straight, surprisingly. And it didn't drip all over, so happy about that. Let's get the big pipe wrench and try to get this piece out of the way. My brother and I went through a period, my older brother and I went through a period where we were giving each other ridiculous gifts, and he got me this enormous pipe wrench, which I always thought was kind of a joke, but it's turned out to be tremendously handy in several situations. There we go, now we're dripping. Several situations like this, so I'm glad I have it. I thought I had a smaller one, but I can't find it. Anyway, hang on. It's loose, but it has the old ground clamp from my original electrical system on it, so I got to disconnect that, or I'll just cut the wire. It's nice to see this pipe isn't particularly sclerotic. It's really pretty clear. It's holding up pretty well for something that's 60 years old. I can take this off now. Do a little deburring. Okay, I'm going to let that drip for a little bit. I'm also going to get a file and kind of clean this up a little bit, and we'll come back and try to thread this thing, see what happens. It's fairly tight because it's so long, so I think we might be able to thread it. Hope so. Hey, Lumber's here. Hey, I'll video you and make you famous.
How's it going?
You all right? You've been practicing.
Done this a couple of times.
That's great. Perfect location too. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, let's get oily. I've cleaned this up and it's still dripping sometimes. Don't want the water. Here's a little piece of insulation. Maybe I'll just jam that in there. All right, so $15 for a pipe threader and $8-9 for cutting oil, which I'm told is the secret. Let's thread some pipe. Wanted to wash my hands before I put these gloves on, but there's no water. Let's see what we got here. Ooh, squeezo bottle. Is there a metal thing in there? Yep. It's sharp. Inconvenient. Sawzall blade. Well, actually, might have a loose sawzall blade. So this is like a big socket wrench with a cutting die in this end. And there's a guide on this side, and then the teeth are a little farther back. And we have to turn it until it goes all through the teeth. And of course, I don't want to hit my bucket here either. Let's bend this down a little bit. And that's right on there. Okay. So far, so good. So now we'll give it our first twist to try to get some bite and see if we twist it off the wall or not, or if it actually is going to work. I think I have the ratchet set correctly already, so here we go. I'm going to push some pressure on the front. I don't think I'm giving it enough force to get it started. I'll take this off. That feels a little better. I think it's doing it. Put yet more oil on it. Oh yeah, drink hearty, boy. I'm gonna do one more turn and then we're gonna back out the chips. We gotta back out any shavings after every couple of turns. So here we go, we'll go up, 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 and we'll just take a little half turn back. Backing out the chips, backing out the chips. We shall come rejoicing, backing out the chips. And now forward again. It really doesn't seem to be putting a ton of force on the pipe as it cuts, so that's good, I think. Backing out the chips, backing out the chips. We shall come rejoicing, backing out the chips. Now we're biting again. I think it's getting there. It's pretty oily. Let's put some more oil on it. Yeah, more oil. Backing out the chips, backing out the chips. Oh, I see threads. It's putting a little twist on the pipe and the clamp, but it's not bad. The turning force is getting harder now. How much farther do we have to go? Looks like 3 more teeth. Yeah, it's getting pretty stiff there. How are we doing on our... 2 more, 1 more, almost there. Should we back out the chip? It's tough to get old and blind. Here, I'll let you see. One more. And I see chips in there, all right? Let's back those chips out. I don't like that. Yeah, I got one more good cut. All right. And we're pretty oily. Let's put more oil in. Can't go much further. We are almost there, man. I think that's about it. I'm gonna do one more pull, and that's the one that breaks on. Yeah. And a pinch to grow an inch. Yeah. All right. Let's call that. We'll call that threaded, I think. Let's see what kind of job we did. I think about 14 minutes. Uh-oh. Okay, so this is a problem. This is unscrewing the pipe from the other end. So we don't want to do that. I'm gonna have to get this on here. Now it's quite a bit looser. Okay. Oh. Huh. I'll put a little oil in a rag and try to see if I can lift the shavings off without having to go get a wire brush or something. Looks pretty good. Huh. I guess the ultimate test is, can you get a fitting on it? That's pretty tight now. This was unscrewing. I hope it's not going to leak at the other end. Yeah, I think it's going to go a little tight. Let's see. Let me get this. It is going. It does need the wrench. It's that tight. But it's not stripping the threads, and the threads look beautiful. So let's put some Teflon tape and pipe dope on here and like try to screw it together for real. I can thread pipe. That's really on there, but there's more thread to go. I'm afraid to over torque it here. I think it's good, and I don't think it'll leak. There's so much extra thread. It could go a few more turns, but I don't want to, I'm putting a lot of pressure on this to turn it. If that leaks, I'll be very sad and surprised, actually. I think that's pretty good. All right, and so for now I have a national pipe thread, or actually sometimes this will be called, what is it? Female iron pipe, FIP, or NTP, to a hose thread, which is female hose thread, so FHT. Oh, caught up on this thing again. So the theory is we can stick this in here and run a hose in there. Put a little Teflon tape on that, and we're done with this part for now. But this is definitely the hard part of the day, so I feel like everything else is going to be fairly easy, assuming it doesn't leak when it turns on, or there isn't a big leak down at the other end there where I was turning the other end of this long pipe. Okay, that's ready for the output end of a hose. I'm going to strike all this stuff and move back 12 feet to do the easy parts. So I need to get another hose input fitting here to feed the outdoor hose bib and the septic, and The Sawzall did such a great job with that other pipe, I thought I'd just cut this long pipe here so I can unscrew it easily. Hopefully I won't go through an electrical wire. Oh yeah. Okay, now I need to cut this input line, and I'm going to put a Y in here to run one hose down to here and one to 12 feet over. I was going to cut this with my handsaw, but since the Sawzall is doing such a great job today, man, we'll just see if we can take a little shortcut here. I want to do it on this side of the bracket. Tee-hee. Suppose we might as well get rid of this too. Looks like I only have a female hose thread to NPT on both sides, so instead of coming down here where I'd like to come, I guess I'm going to try to use this stub. This is just some kind of weird compression fitting. And then I think we can do something like that. So that's the idea. Put some Teflon tape on that and stick a hose in this end. Okay, we'll see. Okay, now we glue a pipe thread, a hose thread fitting onto this. Primer up. That knocks down the gloss. I should plug my other great video called Add a Hose Bib here. I'll put a card up in the corner. Put a little cement on here. And a hose can go on that. So now we're ready to put hoses everywhere. I'm going to screw this Y onto here. And this little 6-foot hunk of hose they sell to start the feeding on reels, which is the shortest hose I could get to go down here. Okay, so here's the setup. The water comes in here, goes through that Y. Both of those are closed now. So the short little hose to run the hose bib and the septic system, and then this hose goes way up there and over to the pipe we threaded. All right, so let's turn the water on and see what happens. Pray. The camera's compensating for it, but you wouldn't believe it. It's 2 in the afternoon and it's dark as can be. I feel like I'm looking through 2 pairs of sunglasses. Reminds me a lot of the light of the solar eclipse, and this is all the smoke from the fires. It's not smoky on the ground because the smoke is coming down from the north and going over the marine layer. Okay. So this all seems dry. Let's turn on this one. Ooh. That's looking pretty good. So now the hose bib and the septic are working. Now let's turn on the house. Man, bunch of shock. This is the one we're really concerned about. Hey, dry as a bone. Pretty happy about that. So let's see if this reduces the pressure upstairs or anything, but I'm gonna call that done, and now we can rip stuff off this wall. Just pulled out this early 12.3 Romex NM from 1962. It's kind of a trip. Unused, it either went to an old oven or wall heater or something. Man, so I just picked up this trick I guess everybody in the world knows except me, that you can go into these Romex staples with the diagonal cutters, if you can get them in there in the first place. This is a tight fit. And squeeze them, and then you can pry the clip out. You don't have to use a screwdriver, which is what I've been doing, and is miserable and can damage the wire. In fact, I have. I'm going to have to rewire some of these. It's hard to do this and hold the camera. So how many of you older viewers remember the 60s children's game show Shenanigans, hosted by Stubby K? One of the games within the game was Bolaganza. This is from the board game of the TV show. I don't know what it's doing down here. Anyway, everything is off the wall, and the wall of terror has finally been conquered. So now we can move on to framing. So here we are back at the beginning, and if you'll recall, we want to put 3 plywood shear panels here, a 3.5 foot, a 4 foot, and a 4 foot. And we intend to nail them to these vertical studs here. But if you look at the bottom of the stud bay, you'll see there's nothing available to nail the bottom to. And that's a problem because we need to nail the perimeter of the plywood shear panels every 4 inches all the way around. So what standard plan A requires us to do is to put 2x4 blocking in the bottom of each stud bay and secure it with 4 10-penny 3-inch hot dip galvanized nails. That's great, and that's what we're going to do. If you look at some of the videos done by Howard Cook of Bay Area Retrofit.com, and I'll link to them here. He was on the Standard Plan A committee, and he's critiqued it in the years since. And he's looked at this attachment, and he says a better way to do it is to actually saw this mud sill off right to the sills, because then you get a perfectly flat surface with this nice old growth tight grained wood to nail into. I don't know how you'd actually do that. I don't know what kind of saw would go that you wouldn't ruin on the concrete here. Actually worried about my drill coming up here with that too. Even though it sounds like a good idea, but that's not what Plan A requires, so that's not what we're going to do. He also has another method where you put a board on the back of the plywood if the ledger's wide enough, or he also advocates using staples, big giant staples, to hold this blocking down because it doesn't split the wood. His argument there is that a contractor who's trying to make money and go real fast will often split the wood. There's often not a lot of clearance, and they don't have time to go back and fix it, even though they probably should. Fortunately, I'm just a homeowner, and I'm not trying to make any money here, so I can actually pre-drill the holes the way the plan says to do. So that's what we're going to do. So we have all the materials here. Let's start cutting some 2x4 and slotting it in. Oh, so here's our first problem. The stucco has slumped into the stud bay, so now my 2x4 stud is out about 1/4 inch here. So all we have to do is rip a piece off the back, but who doesn't own a table saw? Me. So I guess we're going to use the big jigsaw. And if we're going to use the big jigsaw, we might as well try to scribe it. Well, I must say, I think we're doing a fine job with the whole amateur hour aesthetic, which I'm so famous for. So I'm not sure this is a sustainable way of working, but it's all I've got at the moment. Not perfect, took a hair too much off, but it's good enough for now. Let's pre-drill our nailing holes. So I had such an unbelievable amount of YouTube shame after that jigsaw debacle yesterday. I went ahead and built this little thing because I realized I had to up my my board ripping game, because there's a lot of stuff to rip, including these long sister studs. So the idea is this gives us a way to use the circular saw, which I do have, to rip. So in a couple of places like this, there used to be holes through the stucco, and they've been patched. And where they've been patched, there's a block like this on the back to hold the patch in place. And obviously, I can't get my blocking in there. So I'm going to try to cut this off because it looks like it's nailed mostly at the top. And we're going to see what kind of trouble we can get into with the vibrating multi-tool, which I actually never get to use very much, but when you need it, you need it. And this might be one of those times if I can keep this wire out of the way. So let's see what happens. More meatball work. We're through, but I think it's glued to the wall. I'm gonna get a screwdriver. There we go. Yay! I also have a lot of these little nails that come through from the front where the chicken wire's been stapled up that the stucco is hanging on, and I just cut those with the diagonals. So we're good there. Now we gotta rip this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. And let's be honest, it's mostly gentlemen because I've seen the demographic reports to this YouTube channel. But anyway, all of the blocking for the shear panels is in. What made this a bit of a pain was that every single piece had to be ripped down, most of them, to play nice with the stucco. But the ripping jig did a good job and turned into a pretty efficient system after a while. Got a whole bunch of these little offcuts from ripping the 2x4s. I guess I'll make firewood for somebody, I don't know. And in fact, on some of these pieces, I went a little crazy and did some monster scribing, but essentially it's all in. Nothing is nailed because I realized early on that we're really going to need a nail gun and a palm nailer in some instances to do all this stuff. So might as well just wait to get that. And I'm bugging a good friend of mine to loan me that equipment, otherwise I'll go rent it. And of course we have to do blocking around all these vents. The board's a little low because the sheathing plywood has to make a gentle curve around it, according to the plan. And here's the little area to the left of the access door where the pegboard was. And here we have the stepped wall on the north side. The worst part of doing this wall was just crawling around with the limited clearance. And here we have this three-sister situation because the seam between the two plywood boards is going to be on that one all the way to the right. This part of the wall in some ways was actually easier to do because the north face of the building is a wood siding, not stucco, so I could just jam full 2x4s in here without having to rip them all down. Some of them. Others were a little more extreme. This probably being the craziest example, and a bolt has to go here, so. The step down in this wall is one of two places where I just had bare cement and needed a nailing surface, so I had to go get some pressure-treated Doug fir 2x4 and stick it there, and I intend to bolt it with some half-inch bolts to the cement. I have to drill some holes horizontally. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that, but I guess we'll figure it out. The other challenge at places was I had to drill a hole in the bottom of the boards to accommodate existing mudsill bolts that have been here since 1962. So I did a little drill press work to make a cavity for all that stuff. And I need to put nail stop plates on these to keep myself from nailing it when I get the plywood. I was comparing and contrasting the old 1962 redwood with this 2020 Doug fir 2x4, and you can kind of see the old the old board's a little bigger, grain's a little different. So the next step I'm going to tackle while I'm waiting to get a hold of the equipment to do the nailing is to figure out where the bolts are going to go and then drill the holes for those, because we can do those without the boards anchored down. And then epoxy them in, which is be a brand new experience for me, and we'll see how that goes. So I've been noodling on bolt placement this morning, and here on the Wall of Terror it's easy. You put one there and one there in the corners of the tall part. But over here on this long wall, this is what I'm thinking. I'm going to put one in the corner because there's a break in the mudsill right here, so we want to kind of anchor that. We also want to get the corners of the panels, because if there's an earthquake, it'll try to lift the whole panel system as a unit. So we want to do each corner, and so then it's just kind of even spacing every 2 bays. You never want one more than 6 feet away from another. You can see the break in the mudsill there. So then I'll put one here to start the new mudsill, and then one to start the next panel system where the pegboard was. And then there's one just inside the old existing shear wall, so that'll pick up the next bit of load. So I think that's it. Now we got to start drilling. So we're using these 5/8 inch bolts because I only have to use 7 of them. If I was using 1/2 inch bolts, I'd have to use quite a few more. And the SetXP epoxy says to make the hole 1/8 of an inch bigger, so 5/8 is 6/8 is 3/4. So I went ahead and drilled a 3/4 inch hole with a good bit on the drill press, and that works out pretty well because it only leaves like a 16 inch space on each side. Because you don't want this thing to act like an axe and chop this board in half in an earthquake. So then I laid it down and marked the hole on the mud sill, and now we're going to take a paddle bit, also 3/4, and go down to the cement. I just touch it, and hopefully that won't hurt it too much, and then we'll take the rotary hammer and try to break on through into the cement. And we need a little more battery. Well, neither battery has enough charge. I should just get the Milwaukee out. Yeah, the batteries in the old DeWalt are getting old, but you know, the cord on corded tools may be inconvenient to arrange, but they sure work, and they work all the time, so. And in an instant, I think I'm down as far as I can go. Let me get the can of compressed air, and we'll blow the sawdust out of that hole. If you don't have an air compressor lying around, this stuff is great and it's cheap. We're going to use a lot. So, there we go. That's nice and clean. So now, ladies and gentlemen, let me present to you Bosch hammer. So for years and years, I used a lousy 3/8 inch hammer drill for this sort of stuff, and it works, but it's really slow and awful. And a few years ago, for a different project, I bought the Bosch hammer. It was like a couple $100 at the time, and I thought I was really splurging, but it goes through concrete like butter, and it's one of the best things I've ever bought. And you certainly don't want to do a project like this without something like this. This is a rotary hammer, so it can hammer, rotate, and drill, and it has this kind of chuck on it, which is an SDS Plus chuck. So as opposed to a chuck that grabs the bit, these slide into a little groove. SDS Plus was the successor to SDS, and it chuck's backward compatible. And you just click it in like that, and you're ready to go. And the other advantage is the slot transfers the full hammering thrust to the drill bit. It's another reason it works so well. There is an SDS Max, which is much larger, much heavier. I don't think it's really needed for this project. In fact, those drills are probably too big for some of the places we need to go. And then as far as depth, we need to set the bolts a minimum of 5 inches. I'm going to set them 6 at least. I'm going to experiment here a little bit. And then, of course, we have 1.5 inches of mud sill to go through. So we want to go down about 7.5, and that is where I have set this depth gauge here. So when that hits the mud sill, we should be down as far as we need to go. So let's give it a shot. I keep an old CD-ROM in the Bosch hammer case, and I'm not going to use it here because I don't have to, but sometimes when you're free drilling, you can lay this down on the surface and stick your drill through the center hole, and you can use the reflection to line it up on all sides to make sure you're perfectly plumb going up and down. So, little trick for you there. Let's drill this thing now. Yeehaw. Just that simple. Now, to prepare the hole the way the SetXP epoxy wants, you're supposed to blow it out with compressed air for 4 seconds, run a brush through it for 4 seconds, 4 swipes, and then brush it out with another 4 seconds of air. But let's get the worst of this stuff out first and turn our head away. All right, let's see what we can do here. 1, 2, 3. I lost my straw down the hole. Oh my goodness. So if you watch this channel, you know I also do a lot of electronics, so I was able to use my electronics tweezers to reach into the hole here and whoop, I don't want to lose the tweezers down there, and pull this thing out. So we'll try not to have that happen again. Anyway, let's go back to see if we can blow it out and not lose this thing this time. I'm going to hold it in. That seems pretty good. Now we're supposed to use the brush. Where's the brush? And never done this. Let's see how it goes. So that doesn't seem too bad, but the nailing stuff's coming tomorrow, and it's going to have an air compressor. And when I get that, maybe I'll try to see if there's any extra to blow out of there. It seems like I got most of it, but the compressor can probably do a better job. We'll see. Oh, well, let's check our depth. Okay, that's bottomed out there. And there should be about an inch left, which looks like there is. And so by the time you get a plate on that, I guess you use the washer too, I don't know, and put a nut on it. You know, that looks about right. So I think we're good. Now we only have to do a lot of these, so cue Tales from the Vienna Woods. Oh man, I screwed up. Maybe not big time, but a little bit anyway. I came down here ready to clean up and move on to the next phase, and then I foolishly decided to read the requirement detail for the mudsill anchorages in the plan, and I saw this. And if you'll recall, I put bolts in every other stud bay, which is 48 inches apart. It's not 36 inches apart, so I wound up drilling 3 new holes, stealing the bolt from the wrong position on the long wall and the 2 bolts on either side of the access door, which were kind of optional. And now I have them properly spaced on the ends and within the shear units. And then I just went ahead and ordered 3 new bolts anyway, because since I drilled the holes, I might as well stuff them with something, and it doesn't cost that much. But, you know, what a stupid waste of time. So, read the plans. So this lovely item is a Simpson UFP10 tie plate. You see that okay? And the idea is if you don't have enough clearance up and down, as we don't here on the high end of the Wall of Terror, you can use this to bolt the mudsill to the foundation. So there's 5 lag screws that go in here, and then 2 bolts are set in the concrete, 1/2-inch bolts there. So I thought it'd be fun to come up here and do that. And of course, right away, it turns out that my mudsill is not even close to parallel with the edge of the cement. But surprisingly enough, that doesn't seem to be much of a problem for this thing, because even if I push it up against the mudsill, which is at an angle, the part on the cement isn't too far out. So I'm going to go ahead and screw it in. The Simpson website says a low-speed 3/8-inch hex driver is the thing for these self-driving screws, or self-threaded tapping screws. So this may be finally a chance for the DeWalt cordless drill to redeem itself. Now it comes with these screws, but doesn't come with the expensive 1/2-inch bolts that have to go in at least 5 inches. If you can. That's not going anywhere. Well, shall we get the bolts and the Bosch hammer? the truth is I have a secret contractor friend who did our remodel here in 2011 and has been advising me on this project all along the way. He likes me to refer to him as my dark master, but his real name is Lonnie, so thank you, Lonnie. But anyway, my dark master was kind enough to drop by and leave this $350 air compressor, so now I have compressed air and also a framing nailer, which is going to come in handy when it's time to put the plywood shear panels up. It's the first time I've ever used one of these things. It's a pretty wild machine. It's great to have. Well, this is a lovely light. So this horizontal blocking for the vents and whatnot requires 2 of these ridiculous 16-penny 3.5-inch nails. I think they're 0.148 diameter. And there's no way you can drive this in some of these tight spaces with a regular hammer. There's just no way to swing it. And it's difficult anyway, even in a 16-inch stub base. So I went down to the local rental shop and rented a palm hammer. And they laughed at me because I guess it's the first time in 9 years anyone has ever bothered to rent the damn thing. And they don't even have it on the official books anymore. And they had to go find it and clean it up. And of course, it has, well, I'll show it to you. It has no safety stuff on it at all, so it's really not OSHA compliant. And it's taken a little while to dial it in this morning, but I find if I give it about 110, 115 pounds of pressure, it'll actually drive these damn things. Now, I've been pre-drilling for most of them, and that worked. I won't be able to do it in this corner here, which is the next challenge, but it does seem to be working if it doesn't kill me. So let's have at it and try to get this blocking in up here. What I'm talking about kind of goes way into the boards, which I guess is good if you want to resist an earthquake. Anyway, I'm going to pre-drill this side and drive one with this thing, and then this Douglas fir I can take out and give me a little more room, and then we'll get in there and try to do the other side. I'm going to switch to the phone's mic. Here we go, danger time. So it vibrates you, but you know, they do go in. Try to get some more room here. Excuse me. Side of the hammer didn't work too bad to get that set. Of course, this has no magnet to hold the nail or anything. It's just it's just some danger from, you know, the 90s, made by Jet. Let me move the camera to better capture my failure. I hope this doesn't vibrate the camera too much. It is on a separate concrete wall. Oh God, here we go. Let's see what happens. Gonna be okay. Boy, going in, but it's tough. A lot tougher without pre-drilling. Almost. Okay. See if we can finish this up. Yay! That's how it's done! Now I just have to do a bunch more. So at the end of the day, despite my incredible lust to start using the pneumatic gun, I went ahead and nailed all of the framing blocking by hand for 2 reasons. One, You can't buy nails for that nail gun in anything less than a $60 or $70 carton, and I just don't need that many nails. And the other was, since all of these blocking members are bespoke, I don't want to risk splitting any of them, so I wanted to do them by hand so that wouldn't happen and I could pre-drill. So that's what I've done. And so now all that's finished. They're all nailed except for the ones that have bolt holes going through them, and I'm going to wait till I epoxy to nail those down. But now we come to this problem we've been putting off, the Douglas fir here on the end. And I just don't see a good way to go in straight with this thing. So I'm going to go in at an angle and just hope the angle isn't too crazy for the bolt. We're going to put a 1/2-inch bolt in here, you know, 5 inches into the wall. So I'm going to go in with the wood drill and then the rotary hammer, and hopefully that'll be sufficient. And that's like the last big project, and then we can epoxy. So let me suit up and we'll give it a try. I don't think that's too bad, and we can toenail it at the top. You can see I had a bar clamp where I was sistering because the palm nailer tends to drive the boards apart. But if you were paying attention in that last shot, you probably also noticed this, which now that I have a compressor I was using in place of the can of compressed air. I bought this at an auto parts store for like $7-8 because things seem to be cheaper pneumatic-wise at auto parts store. And then you have to go get a fitting for the quick disconnect. And there's about, 30 of these different profiles for these things, but it seems like in real life there's only 2 that are used a lot. The industrial or M style and the automotive or T style. And my Dark Master has set up all of his equipment to use this automotive T style, which has a kind of a short lip on the top. And then there was this fuel line right next to it in the auto parts store. So I bought some of that, it's 1/4 inch. And that gives me a hose I can jam down these holes to clean them. And so the question is, how much cement dust did the can of compressed air leave? And the answer is yes, a little bit. Because the straw wasn't long enough, but this is. I think the compressed air can would work if you had a long straw on it, but this is 100 psi and you can keep it going for a good long time, so it works real well. So now the holes are all clean and we're ready to epoxy. So finally, epoxy day, a big milestone. And I've got the inspector coming the day after tomorrow, so we need to get on it. It's a nice cool morning, which is what you want because it gives you a longer time before the epoxy gels. The label says that's about 30 minutes at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, but if it's cooler, you can get 45 or maybe even up to an hour before it starts to really harden up. Here's the stuff in its dual cartridges. We kind of ripped the label off of it, but there's the A and B chemicals. This is a 22-ounce container, which they sell for $44 to $46, so it's like $2 an ounce. So the Simpson company is doing very well for some some chemicals and sand and stuff and whatever's in here. And not only that, you need this special double caulking gun to dispense it, which my Dark Master was kind enough to loan me. This thing's another $100 or $120, so this sits in here like that, and gives it a squeeze. And then it goes out these disposable, $5 spirochete nozzles that mix the material as it goes down from one end to the other. And then there's this extension piece that screws on to get you down into the bottom of the hole. My Dark Master says the way to do this is to give it a squeeze till you fill the nozzle up, and then mark that with a Sharpie, and then do a test hole. Go down another ½ inch of material here on the side of the tube, fill the hole, 1/2 to 2/3, and get it just right, and then mark that distance. And then once you know that measurement, you can duplicate it with the Sharpie all the way down, so you can just go from hole to hole, going squirt, 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 dispensing just the right amount, which works almost perfectly for me. Except that I've got a couple of holes that don't have any blocking, just mud sill, so they're 1.5 inches instead of 3 inches. Those holes are a different depth, and I'll have to adjust for that. The other adjustment I'll have to make is for the horizontal holes we have. Here comes the garbage truck, hang on. The other holes we'll have to adjust for are the 5/8 inch horizontal holes that hold the dug fur. And Simpson sells like a piston system, this little plug that goes in with a tube through it that you can inject the material, and this cap kind of moves out and gets all the air out of a horizontal hole. But since nobody sells them locally, I assume you can only get them online or at specialty shops. I figure no one actually uses them, and if it's cold enough, the goo will actually stay in a horizontal hole. Mostly you want to get the air out. So we'll see, we'll just experiment in how well that works. I'm not too worried about those bolts since they're not carrying great loads or anything. So I'm going to take the blocking out of all the stud bays where we're going to do this, so we just can work with the mud sill, and let's get at it. Okay, my holes are exposed. But please don't tell my wife. All right, let's have at this. Oh, looks like I got to screw that on first. Okay. That's just a barbed fitting. Ooh, stinky. All right. Oh, there it goes here. Ooh, it's gooey. The horizontal might be a challenge. We'll just back off, let that go. We're supposed to put a little off to the side. Need some scrap for that. Anyway. Oh, here she comes. Yep. Need some scrap. Let's mark this position and go for it. Okay, got a little cardboard here for the extra. All the way down. Now from my mark, I'm going to do about a ½ inch. See what's going on down there? I don't know if you can see down there or not. It's hard to tell. Let's stick a bolt in her. I think that's a 1/2 to 2/3. Let's ooh. It's slow. We're going to give it a spin as we send it down. It's very elastic. Well, it's come up into the mud sill a little bit, so that's actually probably pretty close. Now I will mark this, and we'll just do a bunch of them. Sorry I didn't record more of that, but time was of the essence, and all the bolts seem to go in pretty well. But what did we learn? Well, first, this is really messy stuff. God, messy stuff. Wear gloves and Jesus, ugh. And it also sucked down the whole tube, so that's okay. The marking system worked really good, especially to start to get a feel, and then after that I started to count the number of pumps, which worked well. And then there's kind of a feel to it. When there's enough goo in the holes, it just feels really springy and elasticy when you're twisting the bolt down. So that's good. The horizontal holes weren't really a problem. The UFP10 brackets weren't a problem. The cinder blocks didn't feel quite right. I thought I'd punch through the cinder blocks, but they are filled with cement, and the holes do have a bottom. So we'll see how well that holds. But overall, it's good, and now we're just going to leave it for 24 hours and not do anything. Well, it's inspection day. Everything's cleaned up down here and nailed in, and we're about as ready as we're going to be to have someone take a look at this thing. So yeah, I passed the first building inspection of my life yesterday for the framing and hold down. So yay, something to check off the bucket list, like, you know, skydiving or something. The inspector showed up late in the afternoon in a little SUV with an American flag on the aerial. Young guy, obviously knew a ton about building codes, but surprisingly did not seem to know anything about Standard Plan A or the retrofit program. So there you go. So here I am trying to weenie out every last detail about the sizes of nails and all the details in that plan, and it was all like new to him. I got the feeling that I could have just done anything remotely workmanlike and he probably would have passed it. That's not to say we got off completely unscathed, however, because there's a place where the mud sill breaks and he wanted me to add a bolt there, and indeed I had a representative one on the plan. So we'll do that, but it's ridiculous now. This wall that's supposed to have 7 bolts is going to have like 11 of the darn things. There was a place where I had just put a washer on the nut and no bearing plate because I couldn't fit a bearing plate in there, but it turns out they make a slotted bearing plate that'll tilt into that position. So we'll do that. And he wanted me to foam opening where Romex goes up through the top plate. So we'll do all that too. So yeah, we're good to go. Time to switch to plywood. It's been 72 hours since the bolts were epoxied in, so now we can torque those down. And yeah, time to cut out some plywood and start nailing that stuff up. So yay, moving on. I'm glad to be out of framing hell. So our first plywood panel is all cut out and marked and ready to be banged in right here. And on Standard Plan A, they bring the top of the plywood to the top of the double top plate here. But my situation's a little strange in that my rim joist up here is flush with the top plate. So I can't use the L brackets to attach the rim joist to the top plate. Which they want to do to keep the whole top of the house from sliding off this cripple wall in an earthquake. So a year ago, I just went through the Simpsons catalog and picked these 5-inch by 7-inch plates, which are called TP57s, obviously enough, in the Simpson catalog, because I knew they'd fit. And I specified, I think, 19 of them as shear transfer ties or you know, hold downs for this. And they need to go here. But when the inspector came, he said I could take, and I should take the plywood all the way up to the floor, and that it would act as a shear transfer tie, and that technically I probably didn't need these plates anymore. And I said, oh good, I can save a bunch of money and time. But he said, no, since you put them on the plan, you've got to put them in anyway. So it's going to be a belt and suspenders kind of thing, unfortunately. So we're going to nail these up with 8-penny, 2.5-inch, 131 nails. And I was going to do them tall, but I think they're going to work better this way. And I went and bought a rigid palm nailer, so I have a good one, and it is night and day better than the one I rented because it has all the safety junk on it, but it focuses all its force down a very small cylinder, and that means it actually works like the things are supposed to work instead of like a sledgehammer or something. Here, I'll show you. Yeah, here, see, check this baby out. Can you see it? And it works really great. It doesn't bang your hand up. It's easy to control. And you can actually, you know, set a nail pretty precisely where you want it. And then boom, you're done. So there's no official nailing schedule for these, so I'm just going to go. It's supposed to be 4 inches on center, so we'll probably put some in here, and some up there. And let's hang this thing up. So don't tell anyone, especially not the government, but despite all my measurements, my plywood still came up a 1/4 inch short of the framing I had put in the wall of terror here, despite sistering together 3 2x4s on the end of this wall. So I really needed an extra stud on this end, but there was no way to nail it. So I just glued a board in here, which, you know, glue's supposed to be stronger than the wood itself, so I hope that's going to work. But we'll just cover it with plywood and not tell anybody, okay? So let's pull out the blocking for the gluing, and then there's this little bit of rebar that's sticking out. We'll get the Sawzall and cut that off. Now we'll just disconnect the hoses, get them out of the way. Oh, and get soaked in the process. That's lovely. Very nice. And now we'll catch some of that in the bucket, and we'll drag in the elaborately cut piece of plywood sheeting that's going to fit perfectly into this slot and completely conquer the wall of terror. So we'll just lift this up. Wait, I want look. Okay. Oh, darn it! It's not clearing that septic pipe. That tang to the left. It's okay. Well, that's 3 times. Okay, let's we'll go out. We'll get the circular saw. We'll bring it in here and we'll cut off that leg, and then we'll patch it in later. And now it all fits, except, oh darn, the iron pipe from the front of the house isn't fitting through that little hole I drilled, even though it's in the perfect position. The fitting on it is too big. Okay, let's run out. We'll get the drill. Now we've done 2 holes. It's much larger, and we can finally get that thing up there. And then all we have to do is nail it off. I know I promised early on some humiliating shots of me crawling around on my belly, putting in these UFP 10 clips where there's no clearance. So here's a little video of that. And then, of course, down on the other end of the wall. Wanted to show you one of my favorite UFP 10s. Got a couple of these. I had to chip away the foam insulation to mount them, and there's like 2 feet of clearance to get in here. It's just great. I wish I'd recorded more, because I know you all take a perverse joy in vicariously watching my suffering, but it's hard enough to get myself and the tools in here, so there you go. Deep socket is essential. So here on the wall of terror and also on the uphill wall, the rim joist is away from the top plate. This is above the sheeting, and I'm putting in the Simpson L70 shear transfer tie clips. The tall side goes on the joist, and I need to put 17 of these on each wall. Which is an access problem on the high wall, but we'll worry about that later. And now I'm just hoping I can put these in with the palm nailer, otherwise I don't know what I'm gonna do, so we'll see. Okay, that's really tricky, but I guess it's doable. Yeah. Sometimes it's doable. So I'm slowly getting the hang of this, and I think it's going to work. I still have to pull out about 1 out every 6 nails and redo it. And sometimes the pneumatic nailer makes the corner ride up higher than it should be, but I think that's going to be okay. But this seems doable, so we'll bang them all in. Gee, Dad, how can I get started in a career installing reinforcing angles? Well, son, if you just study hard, apply yourself, you too can crawl around in insulation under people's houses, making them safe in case of an earthquake. Gee, Dad, that sounds swell. It is, son. It's God's work. So check this out. I got about 2 feet of clearance here, and I'm actually nailing these clips in blind. And it's working. Just feel with my finger to where they go. Stick the nail into the hole to kind of get it to stay there. And then hit it with the palm nailer. Now I don't want to mess this one up because I'm showing you and because I'm doing it one-handed. Yeah, I better not. Never mind. So this is crazy. It just started raining outside and it's still sunny and my wife's out hiking, so I hope she stays dry. Anyway, those reveal pictures were the same photos I submitted to the Brace and Bolt website 2.5 weeks ago when I finished construction. And yes, that means there was another round of epoxy with me on my belly, gluing in all those UFB10 half-inch bolts, although less messy this time. And the inspector came back a second time. He went into the house briefly, looked around, said looks good, and signed off on the permit. So yay. Anyway, what did all this fun cost besides my sanity? Why don't we go through the money wheeler-dealer style? Plans and permits, $393. Lumber, $363. Hardware, all the hold-down stuff, and nails, like this $70 box of collated nails, were $940. That was where most of the money was spent for sure. Plumbing and electrical, $194. Other and sales tax was $200. And then tools I didn't have, drill bits, hole saws. I bought myself a bunch of toys that I get to keep for $655. So that's a total of $2,755 I spent. And the project took place over 163 hours over 6 weeks. Now, the Brace and Bolt people won't pay for tools, which they never fail to remind you on their website and all the stuff they send you, and I knew that. So we have to take out that $655, and that leaves me with a total claim for this project of $2,090. And that's okay, because I get to keep the tools and everything. So I'd been keeping a PDF with scans of all my receipts and a spreadsheet with the figures, so I bundled all that up and submitted my application. And 2 weeks later, I got an automated email that seemed to suggest that my entire application had been rejected. Photos permit, receipts, forms, everything. But when I logged onto the website, it turned out it was only the receipts they were upset about. Specifically, they didn't want to pay for the plumbing and electrical, and also the can of foam the inspector made me buy to squirt into the wiring holes. But I mean, to me, those things were definitely part of the project, so I wrote them an email and said, hey, you know, I had my water going through a garden hose for 4 weeks. It definitely was part of the project. Can't you make an exception here? And they wrote back immediately and said, no, kid, pound sand. So I was disappointed. But I went and looked at the detailed rules on the website, which are a little hard to find. And yes, they do, in passing, exclude code upgrades, which the electrical was certainly qualifies as. But I still think the plumbing was something they should be paying for, because there was no way to do the Wall of Terror without taking that stuff off and putting it back on. But I didn't want to fight them over a couple $100 when I could just blast them in this video for being goofs. So that's what I did. Anyway, I took the plumbing and electrical off, which reduced my total claim to $1,863. And that's the amount I finally submitted for. So anyway, this means my total spend was $2,090. The total reimbursed will be $1,863. Remember taxes, which for me are about 22%, so that's going to be $410. So my out-of-pocket expenses for the project are $637. And if you include all the tools I bought, I really spent $1,292 on the tools. But that's okay, because one of the features of the program is now I can apply for a discount on my earthquake insurance, which is about $1,500 a year. And I know from experience that the discount will be $400, $500. So we're going to get that money back in 2 years, 3 years with the tools. So, you know, in the end, we're not really losing. So now there's nothing to do but wait and see what they say about my adjusted application. So you may rightly ask yourself, Ward, what are you doing under your house in the dirt again with a hole saw in your hand? And I'm afraid there hangs a sad tale. Less than a day after I completed that last section of video, I got another automated email from Earthquake Brace and Bolt EBB rejecting everything again, or seeming to. And then I went to the website, and this time photos, not receipts, were in red. And the reason turned out they're rejecting the app this time because these shear walls don't have vent holes in them. Now, never mind the fact that they could have collected everything that was wrong about my application, receipts, vent holes, you know, everything, and who knows what's left outstanding, and given it to me all at once instead of this back and forth and back and forth. And never mind that they have deferred to my county for all the construction details until now. They don't even have working drawings. They don't know exactly what I did or what was approved. Suddenly they get to step in at the end of the construction after it's been signed off and tell me that it's not to code. But anyway, we'll put all that aside. It is true that Standard Plan A, the elevations for the shear walls do have vent holes in them. And it is true that Chapter A3, on which Standard Plan A is built, the 50-year-old code that's way out of date, does have a section asking for vent holes in each stud bay. So by the letter of the law, they certainly are required. However, I was worried about this, so I asked my inspector, and he said, no, that's dumb. I asked my dark master. He said, no, that's dumb. If you go to Howard Cook's website, he'll say, no, that's dumb, because they don't do anything. They're kind of useless ornamentation that don't affect seismic performance in any way except maybe to weaken it slightly because you're putting holes in the darn thing. But, you know, okay. So I wrote them back and I made my case, and they again wrote back and said, pound sand, kid. So it's very disappointing. You know, I live in the Bay Area, so I'm a flaming liberal, and I try to give the government the benefit of the doubt. I don't think they're the enemy. I think they're people just like you and me, especially at the local level, trying to do the best they can. But doggone it, when they enforce the letter of the law instead of the spirit of the law, especially when it's something stupid like this, when it's just ornamentation like this, when it's more work and a waste of time to satisfy some bureaucratic intransigence, it's pretty infuriating, and it does play into all the conservative tropes about how inefficient government is. Doggone it. Anyway, so we're going to put these stupid holes in. I mean, I can see them for inspection purposes, although I don't know why you'd want to inspect the bolts once they've been tightened and inspected and put in. But, you know, okay. Maybe after an earthquake you want to look in and see if the mud sill cracked or something. And it's good that I marked with a chalk line where all the studs are, so finding the center point won't be hard. But man, this is just really frustrating. So of course our friends in Sacramento don't know this pegboard wall exists, so I'm gonna skip it. So at last we reached the end of this 14-month road, and after the pandemic and forest fires, when 2020 throws us that Christmas earthquake in the last month of the year left here, you know, I'll be ready. Gotta say that after my application went into final review, Earthquake Brace and Bolt EBB got me my check in one business day. You know, it came really fast, so kudos to them for that. And also their web portal had a PDF of the California Earthquake Insurance premium discount request form I need all filled out and ready to go for me to download and just send to my insurance agent. So that was very helpful as well. So what have we learned from this adventure besides the fact that pandemics make you fat and palm nailers are kind of cool? I think 9 things. 1, if 2 Advil are good, 3 Advil are better. 2, you can do a lot of damage with a framing nailer. 3, people are very generous with their time, tools, and advice when you tell them you're going to do something stupid like this. 4, since EBB won't pay for plumbing and electrical and some other things, and they don't have a copy of your working drawings, you could, if you were less than honest, purchase more covered material than you need to get those purchase receipts and then quietly return the extra. But I didn't say that. 5, you really have to respect and admire the professionals who do this work every day and do it efficiently and make a living. I mean, they could have done this in 3 days and it took me, 6 weeks. And even though it's noble work, it's very, very difficult. So, mad props, as the kids say, to the pros. 6, bureaucracies are bureaucracies, even well-run ones like EBB, and also the code needs to be updated with regard to nailing patterns, hold-down hardware, and vent holes, actually. Also, it would be nice if EBB is going to delegate construction details to the county, they delegated all construction details to the county and didn't do any, last-minute overrides, so we have some determinism at the local level. 7, the program seems to be geared more towards contractors than owner-builders a little bit, which is a shame because an owner-build is the only one that actually makes real economic sense, and I would think contractors would find the record-keeping and possible capriciousness from EBB to be onerous. Also, it would be nice if the grants were more, of course, but it would really help if they were tax-free, because even though I'm getting a personal benefit from doing this work, there is a public benefit as well. 8, if I had to do it again, I would more aggressively pursue an engineered solution, because I think that would result in less body-killing labor, because I wouldn't have to install so much hardware, but it's hard to know. It would be nice if EBB had some staff, structural engineers available to give kind of free, non-binding advice with appropriate disclaimers to homeowners to make that decision. But of course, that's not going to happen because of liability, chain of command, and that contractor bias. And finally, 9, if 3 Advil are good, 3 Advil and a martini are even better. So this concludes my first feature film for this channel, maybe my last, who knows. Thanks for watching, and extra thanks if you slogged through the whole thing from the beginning. Appreciated. So subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.